Hi, I'm Andy Jones, Content Editor for Plaid's online education program, Let's Paint, and I'd like to welcome you to Color Lessons. Today, we're painting a cotton candy sunset.
For all of our color lessons, I'm using FolkArt's Pure Artist Pigment paint. It's been specially formulated to be very, very thick so that you can use this for a wide range of painting techniques. You can use it thinned down for transparent watercolor effects, or you can use it with a palette knife for really thick, rich impasto work. The 20 colors of FolkArt Pure Artist Pigments are available at plaidonline.com/Let's Paint. And in the set, there is also a great color theory worksheet that is specially coded for you to paint on and reuse if you'd like to. And this is included in the kit with the 20 colors. So this is a great color theory booklet, and we also support this with an online video. I'm also using the FolkArt Pure Artist Pigment Mixing Mat, and this is a great tool to use in place of a palette. It's a reusable silicone mat, and it has spaces to put your colors out around the edge of the palette. Part of it is gray so that you can see exactly what value of colors that you're using. Part of it's white so that you can see how transparent a color is. It also has a quick guide for color harmonies, as well as a little vocabulary list so that you can keep yourself familiar with color theory terms. This is a great product, and I think you'll really enjoy using it, and you can use it over and over and over. It cleans off beautifully and does not stain. For all the color lessons, I'm using the FolkArt Select Firm Bristle Brush. These brushes have been designed with a firm bristle synthetic filament, and it is great for canvas painting. It will stand up to lots of abuse. With care and cleaning, these brushes will last you a long, long time. They're perfect for canvas painting as well as any other kind of fabric painting that you're going to do. I think you're really going to love these FolkArt Select Firm Bristle brushes. They're available at plaidonline.com/Let's Paint in a package of 7 beautiful brushes. Some of you are concerned that you can't draw. Well, we've got you covered because we're teaching you how to paint, not how to draw. The color lessons come with a package of full color photographs so that you have a complete set of all of the photographs for all of your color lessons paintings. In addition to that, we have full-size pattern sheets. So they're printed out for you so you don't have to enlarge anything, and you can transfer the designs directly to your canvas. So these also are available at plaidonline.com/Let's Paint.
Today's lesson is being taught on a 12 by 12 stretched canvas, and I've established a horizon line on my canvas. And it is best to use an artist tool called a T-square, where you can line it up with the edge of your canvas, just draw a mark straight across, and that way your horizon line is square to the edge of your canvas. If you don't have a T-square, you can measure from the bottom of the canvas up. It doesn't really matter where on your canvas you put your horizon line. You just don't want to have it dead center. So I've raised mine up a little bit from the center of the canvas, probably, maybe 7.5 inches up from the bottom. And again, this is a 12 by 12 canvas. All right, let's look at our palette of colors that we're going to be using today. We have FolkArt Pure Artist Pigments, and I have titanium white, yellow light, medium yellow, pure orange, red light, alizarin crimson, Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, and dioxazine purple. It seems like a lot of colors, and these all seem much more intense than what we're actually going to use on our painting, but we are going to use these in a couple of different ways. We're going to use them as transparent washes in the background, and then we're going to use them as pastel colors that we're going to lay on with a palette knife. One other thing that you will need is FolkArt floating medium, and I love to use this to help my paints move a little bit better, and also to use them as transparent washes of color. So I'm going to put my floating medium in a little portion cup here on my palette so that I always know right where it is, and so that it doesn't kind of spread out on my palette. I am using the FolkArt Select Firm Bristle brushes, and I'm basically going to paint this using the 1-inch flat brush. All right, so let's get started here. I'm going to mix up a couple of colors. So I want to make a nice pastel blue color. So I'm going to start with titanium white, and I'm going to mix in just a little bit of Prussian blue. And Prussian blue is a very, very strong color, so add it sparingly to begin with. And you want to mix and mash the paint down. Don't try to mix by stirring the paint. Mashing the paint and pushing it back into a puddle. That's the way to get your color mixed beautifully and thoroughly, because you don't want any surprise streaks of color coming out in your paint. So I'm also going to add just a little bit of ultramarine blue to this, because we want a nice kind of tropical pastel blue. So I've got a nice blue color here, but I want it a little bit more on the blue-green side. So I'm going to come back and add just a little bit more Prussian blue to this. And every time you mix a color, you're going to mix it just a little bit differently. So each time you paint this painting, you will have different color mixtures and you'll create a little bit different painting. And that's one of the fun things about painting this style of kind of abstract landscape. I also want to make a kind of a orangey coral color. So I'm going to start with some titanium white, and I'm going to add some pure orange to this. And to make this appear to be a little bit more on the coral side, I'm going to add some yellow to this. And I'm going to start with yellow light. So just pick up a little chunk of that, and we're going to mix that in. And I want to make that a little bit more intense, so I'm going to just add a little smidgen of medium yellow. And again, mix that in, mashing the paint and pushing the paint back into a puddle. All right, so one thing to notice and to make yourself aware of is I've made a blue and an orange color on my palette. And these are complementary colors. So this painting that we're doing is primarily a complementary color scheme painting. So it will be primarily blues and oranges and some variations of those colors. I want to create a nice pastel violet color that we're going to be using. So I'll start once again with some titanium white, and I'm going to add just a bit of dioxazine purple to this. And we get this beautiful purple color. And so these are the primary mixes that we're going to start with to create the background of our painting. So this painting is going to be done basically in two layers. The background layer is going to be transparent applications of color, and then we will come back and start to add more opaque colors on top. So looking at my painting, I've got dark blue in the corners and then some pale orange next to the horizon. And then at the horizon, I start again with dark blue, and it gets lighter and then changes into beautiful oranges and pinks at the bottom of the painting. So to begin, I'm going to dress my brush, and that simply means to pick up some medium on the brush. So I'm dipping into my floating medium, and I'm working that floating medium into the bristles of the brush. So that's called dressing the brush. So I'm dressing the brush with floating medium, and then I'm going to pick up some of my pastel blue mixture. And the floating medium is going to make that color a bit more transparent, and it's also going to make it slide around a little bit more. It's going to make the paint kind of fluid and juicy. So we're going to come back up to our painting, and I'm going to start right here in the center of the canvas at the top, and we're just going to work this blue onto the canvas in vertical strokes. And then I'll work over here to the right-hand side of the canvas. And I'm putting on paint using a firm pressure on the brush. Just pick up some more color as I need it. And keep in mind that this painting is going to go through a dramatic change from where we are starting here to what it's going to look like when we start to travel on the more opaque colors. So while I've got this blue color in my brush, I'm just going to pick up a little of my dioxazine purple and white mixture. Didn't rinse the brush in water, didn't clean it out, didn't do anything, just stuck it right in this paint. And over here, I'm going to add some purple tones to my sky. And this is just my version of one of those beautiful skies that has all of the blues and the purples and the oranges and pinks in it. And it really does look like cotton candy. So I'm just softening some of this purple up into my blue and just kind of cleaning the brush off, not worrying if there are some brush marks. This is perfectly fine to leave it a little bit more casual looking. And I'm going to wipe my brush. And when I wipe my brush, I put it on my shop towel, fold the shop towel over, and then pinch and wipe the brush. So that cleans all the paint off the outside of the brush, gets a lot of the paint out of the brush, but most importantly, it grooms the brush back to a nice, fine chisel edge. So get in the habit of wiping your brush by folding it inside a paper towel. That keeps the paint off of your hands so that you can just be a little bit neater with your whole painting. All right, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of titanium white on my brush. Didn't add any floating medium to this, just my wiped out brush and some titanium white. And we're just going to brush a little bit of this white on just to get some color on the canvas. And this will pick up some of the blues and purples that were in my brush. And so I'm just scrubbing this on right now, just softening it in to the previously applied color and just doing a little bit of blending. We just want to make sure that we have some paint on the canvas. I want to do this before I add my oranges so that we negate making muddy colors with the combination of blue and orange. So we're just putting some white on and letting whatever color's in our brush just drag out. You can come down and touch your horizon line. If you need to, you can go over it a little bit. Just make sure that you can still see it so that you know exactly where it is and that you don't have to worry about coming back and reapplying that. All right, so again, just picking up the white on the brush. And if your paint's not moving, then use the corner of your brush just to come in and give a little bit of a scrub, and that will soften up that edge and let you blend and soften it very, very easily. So again, I just keep picking up white, and I've not been adding floating medium to this. This is just a straight white paint, and I'm just brushing it on and scrubbing it where I need to soften some of the blue color. Right over here, just give a little bit of a scrub, and you can easily blend that because your FolkArt Pure Artist pigments have an extended open time so that you've got time to work. If you are running out of working time, you probably aren't putting quite enough paint on the canvas. So you've got to have some paint so that it isn't just going to dry out immediately. But just vertical strokes, blending and softening that. All right, so now we've got wet paint all over our canvas, and I'm just going to give the brush a quick wipe on the shop towel just to get some of that excess white out of the brush. And now I'm going to pick up some of the coral color, and I am going to add a little floating medium to that and just stick the corner of the brush into the cup of floating medium and then work the floating medium and paint into the brush. And we are going to start a little bit off center because I don't want my my intense sun. I don't want that to be dead center in the canvas. I want it to be off to the left-hand side just a little bit. So I'm going to start my application of orange off to the left just a little bit. And I'm just going to put this color on and let it drag onto the canvas. That's just what I want. I want it to kind of cling onto the canvas and just fall off the brush as it will. I'm not trying to blend and soften this in any way, shape, or form. Just put it on and just let it drag and just cling to the weave of the canvas. So I'm pulling this up a little higher here so that I've got now some orange setting the stage for what we're going to do in our next stage of painting. Just applying some nice light color on here. Just kind of establishing the tones or colors in our sky. And I think we've all seen a beautiful sky. It's even magnified when that kind of rainbow-colored sky is reflected in water, which is what we have going on here. And this is just my kind of simplified, abstracted version of that. So again, putting a little bit of extra color on, just pulling it up and just letting it cling to the canvas. And this right now is all I'm going to do at this stage of the sky. So if you want to, you can pause your video here and give yourself a chance to catch up with me. Now that you have your sky completed to this stage, we're going to begin to develop the water portion of our painting. And so I've got super dark color that's going to be along the horizon there. And so we're probably going to put that on in 2 separate layers. So I'm going to get started by just developing our lighter blue areas. And I'm going to pick up some of our light blue mixture with just a little floating medium. And we're going to put that on, just kind of eyeballing where this is going, leaving some room for some dark. So it's just going to fill in this nice kind of wedge shape here. So I'm just getting some color on it. It doesn't need to try to be anything at this point. It's just color. I think this painting experience will be easier for you if you don't attempt to try to make this look like anything in particular. It's just areas of color, and in the end, we want this to have a pleasing overall appearance and just look like kind of fun reflections of the sky in the water. So just brushing this on, not using a ton of paint. I can grip the brush put the handle where your pinky meets your palm and grip it, and then just do a little scrubbing on the corner of the brush. It's a great way to kind of stretch your paint out a little bit more. And then you can come back with some vertical strokes and just kind of smooth that out if you want to. And again, right now it's not going to really look like much of anything, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, I am going to now pick up a little bit of Prussian blue and ultramarine blue on my brush, and I'm just going to brush mix these colors on my palette. I did not rinse the brush in water, and I didn't really wipe it out because I had basically cleaned the paint off of my brush on the canvas. Right, so now we have the kind of scary task of laying in our horizon line. And so this is a little awkward for me to do this, but you just want to set your brush down and carefully paint right next to the horizon line. Keeping this as straight as you can. And it's hard to breathe and do this at the same time. But just pull the brush along. Where I start to run out of paint, I'm just going to pick up some more paint on my brush. And I'm going to set the brush back down and kind of cover my tracks a little bit. And then just continue on. Slowly and carefully. And the more you paint, the more experience you will have, and the easier this will be to do. But as you can see, I'm just taking my time. We're in no hurry to put this on. And the horizon is the one thing about the painting that you have to get right. Your horizon line has to be straight. It has to be even. So take your time and work slowly and carefully to establish your horizon line across your painting. All right, that was the hardest part of the painting, and we've just done that, and we did it pretty easily. So now I'm going to take this dark blue color, and I'm just going to apply it, starting at the horizon line, and just letting it kind of come down and soften into some of this lighter blue. This isn't the end of this, so don't think it has to look a certain way at this point. I'm still using the brush mixture of Prussian blue and ultramarine blue. Just laying this color on and just barely letting it soften. What I don't want to do is to put this color the same width all the way across the canvas. I want it to come down further, drop up. So I want this to have an irregular shape. In all of my color lessons, I'm trying, oh, that was not good where I got that color up there in the sky. But let me show you, I'm just going to dampen a clean brush in some water. And I'm just going to very carefully just kind of push this blue color down to the horizon. Wipe the brush off again and just put the brush down and push down. So that's gotten rid of all of the blue in the sky. And I want you to see that all mistakes can be corrected. Sometimes the correction is a very easy fix, and sometimes it's much more invasive. This was pretty easy to touch that up. So now on that same little brush, I'm just picking up a little bit more of that coral color, and I'm just going to very carefully just kind of lay that color right back in, and problem solved easily. And it didn't require panicking, didn't require racing to do something. Just pause and correct the mistake and then move on from that. Because everyone who paints makes mistakes, and I am no exception to that rule. All right, so I'm just going to kind of soften some of this color down a little bit more. Okay, now we're going to start doing some fun techniques here. I'm going to wipe my brush on my shop towel, again getting more of the blue color out of the brush. And I'm probably going to set that dirty paper towel aside and pick up a clean one, just so I can keep everything nice and neat. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of floating medium on my brush and just work that into the brush with whatever color of paint was on there. And I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to use that to kind of soften the area where these two different blues come together. So now I'm using my floating medium as a vehicle to help me kind of soften these colors together. Just brush it on, pat, 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 let it soften. I'm going to wipe my brush out. And now I'm going to pick up some of my light blue color with some floating medium. And we're going to come back and we're just going to now soften that blue a little bit more. Well, I like how I've got like this nice crisp area of blue contrasting with the darker blue behind it. That looks really nice to me. So we're going to make sure to leave that alone. So this kind of painting should be fairly relaxing while you're doing it, because you don't have to make it look like my finished painting. You could just do what you want to create your own nice arrangement of dark blue and light blue in the background, because that's what this is right now. We're just setting the background tone, and I'm just wiping the paint out of my brush, pinching it and grooming it back into shape. And then just like we did here in the sky, we're going to now begin to add some of these orange and peach tones in the bottom. And I'm going to do that again by starting with my titanium white. And we're doing that to help soften up some of the blues that are in my brush. And we're just brushing this on and just softening that in, making this a nice, very, very soft blue before we put on our peach color. The main objective of this phase of the painting is just to get some color all over our canvas. And thinking about some of the recent workshops that I've taken, I can hear my teachers saying that I am taking way too much time doing this, that I need to get this on much faster. But I think I would rather take my time and enjoy doing this than try to rush through it. But this underpainting is not what people are going to see or notice. So we can get this on a little bit more quickly. I'm going to just use the corner of my brush again and just kind of scrub and soften where I need to, and then pinch and wipe the brush, groom it back into a nice flat brush, and continue to soften this color onto the canvas. Nothing difficult about this technique. We're just picking up paint and brushing it on to our canvas, setting the stage so that we don't end up basically mixing blue and orange together on the canvas and making a rather unattractive shade of brown. All right, so this is a little harsh here, so I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm going to pick up a little floating medium on the brush and come back in and just give a little scrub here, softening the color, and then come back and do a little gentle blending, wiping my paintbrush off on my shop towel when I start to move color to an area where I don't want it to be going, and just blending and softening here. And I think we are good for this initial underpainting. And I'm going to now start to add a little bit of color to this. I'm going to come back in with my coral color or my peach color, and I'm just going to begin to put some of this on, and I'm just letting the paint just kind of fall off the brush. I'm just going to spread this out a little bit to mimic what we've got going on in our sky. I'm just going to turn my brush over. Still plenty of paint there. All right, I'm going to now create another color mixture on my palette, and I'm going to make a nice pink color. So I'm going to take some titanium white, move that over here, and I'm going to add just a little bit of alizarin crimson to this. So I'm going to make a nice soft pink color. Add just a little bit more alizarin crimson here, but I don't want it to be too dark at this point. Just mix that in, and I'm going to just pick that color up on my brush. As you can see, it still has some of the peach color in it, and that's fine. Just going to brush mix whatever was in my brush into this pink color and add a little floating medium and brush that in. So we're just creating a different color here, and as we come back up to our painting, we are going to begin to brush some of this on here at the bottom, and then continue it over on the right-hand side of our painting. And just soften this in. As you can see, we're already starting to get some really interesting color effects going on our canvas. Just strengthening some of this pink color. And I can, just for fun, add a little floating medium and some of my purple color. Again, not cleaning out my brush, just picking it up, brush mixing it on, and I can add some kind of purple or violet color down here, just setting the stage for some of the stronger color that we're going to put on with a palette knife. Just want to give it a nice, good base tone here. So now at this point, the entire canvas is covered with paint, and it's a good time to pause your video and let you catch up with the water portion of the painting, and then dry the painting completely using a hair dryer or a heat gun. So we'll come back and then we'll begin to add some more intense colors to our painting. Okay, I have dried my entire painting, and so we're going to begin now to layer on some stronger, more intense, more opaque color. And the fun thing to keep in mind is that your painting doesn't have to look like mine, doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It's your own painting, and as long as you have some bright colors in the sky and you reflect those back into the water, you're going to have a successful painting. So I have now on my palette, I've mixed my initial shade of blue and I've added some white to that to make a lighter shade of blue. So I'm going to take my blue color and add some floating medium to it. Just fill my brush with this, and we're going to lay in some of the stronger blue colors on our painting. And we don't necessarily want to blend and soften these colors in. We're just starting to lay on some of the more strong color on our canvas. So just going to brush some of this on. Add a little bit over here. It just kind of fades as it comes in to the lighter, brighter part of our painting. Then I'm going to brush some on down here. And we're just going to be hopping around, kind of layering on some of these more intense, stronger color. I'm going to wipe my brush off. I've not cleaned my brush in water the entire time I've worked on this painting. And so now I'm going to pick up some of my lighter blue color and some floating medium. Just brush mix that together here on my mixing mat. And I'm going to soften some of this blue just by brushing this other color in. Keep adding color and just kind of merging that a little bit and letting it trail off. We'll add some down here. And I'm not trying to have a finely rendered, smooth, blended area of color. Just laying some of this on and letting it kind of mix and merge together. Just creating some interesting marks on the canvas, making sure that there is some variety in the shape of the marks, how big they are, and kind of where they fall on the canvas. Always want to have some variety and some interesting marks. That's what we're really looking for, is to make this painting look a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to pick up some white on my brush now and come back up here, and I'm just going to soften this by adding white and kind of blending that in a little bit. But I'm not completely getting rid of the blue. We're just adding some light color, adding some stronger color. And then where I come to my horizon line, I'm just going to turn my brush around, and so I can make a nice crisp edge at my horizon line and just soften that up as I need to. And just kind of working that color across the canvas. Just wisps of color. not trying to soften it in and blend it. We'll come back down here in the water. And again, we're just layering some color on and just softening a little bit, not really trying to blend it in. It does blend some, but we're not looking for necessarily a smooth gradation of color. Just having fun, making sure that we have interesting colors and shapes on the canvas. Just picked up a little bit more white on my brush and just going to soften that in. Okay, I'm going to wipe the color off my brush, and I'm going to add some much more intense dark blues to my painting. So I'm going to use some ultramarine blue and Prussian blue brush mixed together on my brush. And I can add a little floating medium to that just to help my paint slide around a little bit more. And on my painting, the darkest areas are right along the horizon line. So that's where we're going to start. And this is not the final color here. We're just intensifying this. The first color that we put on had some transparency to it, and this is more opaque. And putting a second layer on really does help make it much, much stronger in color. What we're doing is we are building up our painting in multiple layers. That way we have some different interest as you're looking at your painting. And some of the transparent color that we put on first, you'll be able to see in the finished painting. But we're just adding more intense layers of color as we go. And with each layer, we're getting a little bit more opaque. So just adding some variety to the colors that we're putting on our canvas. And we're creating differences in opacities so that we have just built in more interest in our painting. So that's our goal, is to create an interesting looking painting by applying paint in different layers of transparency and opacity as we work. Many times I will begin a painting and we'll do lots of kind of transparent washes to the painting and then come back and paint with more opaque colors on top of that. And it just gives a much more interesting appearance to the overall painting. So I'm just going to pick up some of my lighter blue mixture, and we're just going to brush some of that in and let some of that soften into our darker blue color. If I need to, I can pick up a little floating medium to help make my paint a little more fluid. Again, I'm just going to wipe the excess color off of my brush. I'm going to pick up a little floating medium. I'm just going to come in here and just kind of scrub to help soften that a little bit. Wipe the color off my brush. Come back and just kind of soften that a little bit. I'm adding a little bit of white just to lighten that up some. Just softening this as I need to. Always looking at the whole painting and evaluating how things are looking. And I think we're looking really good right now. I am not happy with how dark this area is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to my palette and I'm going to pick up some Prussian blue, ultramarine blue, and I'm going to add in Payne's gray. And Payne's gray may look black here on the mixing mat, but it's actually a very, very dark blue-gray color when you thin it out with white or make it more transparent. But in this case, it's just going to make this color extra dark, and I can add some dioxazine purple in there too just to make the color a little richer. I don't want to use black because black is just going to be so harsh on this painting. But we can come back now and add in some very, very dark color just to make this horizon line even more dramatic with our light-dark contrast. So just carefully putting this super dark color on next to the horizon line, and then I can soften it down a little bit, making sure that we have some variety in our line width. And these are the kind of questions that you need to ask yourself as you're painting is, does my line width have any variation to it? If it all looks the same, then you need to come back and do something, probably add some more dark to get some variation in how your line looks. Okay, I think that looks much better, and I could come back and add just a little bit up here in the top of my painting. All right, I think we are ready to let our painting dry at this point, and then when we come back, we are going to start using our palette knife to lay on some very, very bold, bright swaths of color to create our dramatic sunset and reflections. So pause your video and dry your painting, and when we come back, we'll start to use our palette knife to really make the painting come alive. All right, our painting is now dry, and we are going to begin to use our painting knife to add some of the bolder colors in our clouds and reflections. I like this painting knife that's kind of a trowel shape. It's about 2¼ inches long, and it has rounded corners on it, and it's got a rounded tip. The most important part about this is that it's incredibly flexible. You need a flexible palette knife in order to do this, and I like one that is offset so that you can hold it like this and you can apply paint in either direction to your canvas. Now, I'm going to pick up some, I've made 2 different colors of coral here. So I have my original mixture, and then I took part of the original mixture and added some more red light and medium yellow to make this color. So I'm going to take some of this color on my palette knife, and I'm loading up a little bit on the back of the palette knife, and I am going to just begin to apply some bright orange on my painting. So again, I'm just going to start here where I want my cloud colors to be the most intense and brightest, and I'm just kind of stretching that out and tickling it as I move up the canvas. Don't put too much paint on to begin with. You can, holding your palette knife flat against the canvas, you can spread these kind of marks out. So it's not necessarily a one and done. You can manipulate these colors a little bit. So I'm now pushing up, pulling down, just kind of spreading this color out a little bit to create some interesting cloud shapes. And I just keep picking up small amounts of paint. You don't want to overdo it all at once. You can always come back and add more. It is much more difficult to scrape all of the color off and come back and start it again. But if you need to, you can smudge and smear this color around a little bit. And I'm making this come out a little bit wider in some areas. Just keep picking up a little bit of paint and just adding it to the sky. This is the fun part of this painting. If you've not used a palette knife before, it's going to take a little bit of work to get used to it. So I'm going to come back right down next to my horizon line and set my palette knife down and add the color right where it meets the horizon, and then just kind of soften that up. And I'm noticing right over here, there's a little bit of canvas showing where I didn't quite get it covered to begin with. So I'm just going to make sure I've cleaned my palette knife off so that it doesn't have any stray color where I don't want it. I'm going to pick up a little paint on my palette knife, and I'm going to set that color right down and just soften that and cover up that little area on the horizon where I had missed it with the initial application of color. Okay, just going to continue again with my more vivid peach or coral color. Don't have to cover everything in solid. It will be more attractive if I don't. And I'm just going to continue right down at the horizon line, adding little bits of color. And then as I need to, I can smudge them up into the sky. If you've never painted with a palette knife before, it will require some practice. So you'll need to practice to see how much paint you need to put on your palette knife and what kind of shapes or marks that you get. So I've got some nice vivid orange colors on my sky. I've wiped my palette knife clean, and I'm just going to come in here and add some blue to the sky. So just adding some of this blue on. And one thing that I cannot stress enough is that the marks that you make with a palette knife, you can't make any other way. There's no brush mark or no brush technique that will give you that same sort of interesting effect that you get by using a palette knife. So now I've picked up some lighter blue. I'm just going to trowel some of that light blue color on. And you just start to get these beautiful color effects. Now, I've not cleaned off my palette knife, but I've now picked up some white, and I'm just going to apply some of that color using my palette knife. And again, you get wonderful color effects that you really can't get any other way. So I've added some of that over here. So I'm going to add some. I'm just going to clean off my palette knife here a little bit. Just going to smudge that. And I'm going to add a little bit of that over on the left-hand side of my painting. And then I'm going to add some of my violet color in here. And that looks really lovely. And I want to add an additional tone to that. So I'm going to take some of my violet color, and I'm just going to add a little bit more dioxazine purple to it. And this is where you really get to be the deciding factor on how your painting looks. I'm going to take some of this darker violet color, and I'm just going to add just a little bit of that right in there. And I think that looks wonderful. I'm just going to leave that, not going to mess with that anymore. Sometimes you put something on and it looks great, and you don't have to mess with it at all. I'm going to now begin to kind of mirror some of this color down here in the bottom portion of our painting on the water. So I'm going to take some of the blues that I had and pick them up on my palette knife. And I'm going to add some of these blue colors on. And it's just this wonderful effect that you get with a palette knife that you just can't get any other way. And it's fun and it's exciting. And I think if you'll give it a try and you'll practice a little bit, you will be in love with your palette knife and the effects that it allows you to create on your painting. So just that easy, just that quick, just adding in some interest to these blue areas of the water. And if I need to, I can add a little bit of white even to my lighter blue, just to create another variation of our blue color. And we can come back in and we can add some of that in here and just love these kind of fun effects that you get with the palette knife. Let's move on to some of our violet color. And we have violet up here in our sky, so we're going to put in some violet here in the water. This is the darker of the two violet colors that I have. And I can put this color on and I can pull it up that way, or load the opposite edge of the palette knife blade and put that color on and pull it down the opposite direction. So you can push up or pull down. Either way, doesn't matter as long as you're creating interesting shapes. So now I've got some of my lighter violet color, and I'm just going to brush a little bit of that on, soften it, and then just stop. I think that looks really, really nice there. Let's put some of our orangey color on here. So I'm just going to reflect some of that right down from the horizon line right down on the canvas. Better to put it on a little bit light and then come back and add more where you want it. So just as I've got more coming over this way, I'm just going to apply some with my palette knife. I can soften it either way that I want to, up or down. And this is why we have that transparent layer underneath this, so I don't have to worry about filling in the canvas. It's already got paint on it, so if I have an area that doesn't get covered with much paint, that's okay. I already have paint on there. And smudge it around if you need to, keeping your palette knife flat against the canvas as you do that. All right, so I'm going to now pick up some of my pale peach color as I've moved down, and we're just going to begin to add some of that color down here, working it up or down as needed. And this is the time in a painting when, if I'm listening to some good music, chances are I've already turned it up once or twice, just because this is fun and exciting, and I think the music really helps get you in the creative spirit. So again, you can soften up or down as you need to. I'm going to take some of this light color, since I put some down here in the bottom. I'm going to come back up and I'm going to add some up here in the sky. And before we leave this, I've made a mixture of titanium white and alizarin crimson. So now I have a pinky color, and I'm just going to begin to trowel some of this on down here at the bottom. And I think these pink colors and these coral colors together look so good. So once again, just putting this on, and I can soften it up or down. And depending on the quality of your canvas that you're painting on, some of these will be a little bit more speckled because the weave of the canvas is a little more coarse, and so that will just create a different sort of look to it, but not it won't be bad. Just remember, not everything that's different is not bad. So I'm going to now take some white, and I'm going to lighten up, make a lighter pink mixture here, just creating variation. And I'm going to pick up some of this on my palette knife, and we're just going to lay in some lighter pink down here in the bottom, and can soften up or down. I think that made that much more interesting there. All right, so we've done a lot of troweling on of color. That's a lot to absorb. So if you'd like to pause your video now, you can certainly do that. Catch up on all of this troweling on of palette knife color, and then dry it completely. And we're going to come back and we're going to add some more color to our seascape, and then we'll be wrapping it up. So pause your video and bring your canvas to this stage and then dry it completely. We're back now, and I've dried my canvas, and I'm going to begin to mix a couple of colors to indicate some more bright yellow in our sky and water reflections. So I'm going to take some titanium white, find a clean spot on my mixing mat, and at this point that's becoming harder and harder to do, but I'm going to add some medium yellow to this, and just to mix that color up. And so now I've got a nice yellowy color here. And I'm going to take another little bit of white, and I'm going to add some yellow light to that and just mix that together. And so I've got two different shades of yellow. And then I'm going to mix one other color. I noticed that in my finished painting, I had a much darker pink than I've put in this particular painting. So I'm going to take my darker pink color, take a portion of that aside, and I'm going to add even more alizarin crimson to that to create an even darker, more intense pink color. And so I want to mix that thoroughly together so that my color doesn't have surprises in it. So I don't want to suddenly apply color to my painting and then have a streak of pink or alizarin crimson pop up there that I wasn't prepared for. All right, so I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to pick up some of this darker pink color. And we're going to come onto our canvas, and down in this lower area, I'm just going to begin to add in some of this darker pink. And I'm just going to smudge that around a little bit. And I'm going to bring this color back in, adding a nice swath of dark pink there. And then I'm going to take some of my original pink color and just kind of soften that back a little bit. And there we've got like some nice dark pink there, creating some interest in the lower left part of our canvas. So to add our yellows in there, I'm going to take my mixture of medium yellow and titanium white, and I'm just going to add some bright yellow right where my final highlight's going to go. So just kind of spread that out a little bit, creating a more intense yellow highlight there. And then I'm just going to reflect some of that down here in the water. And I think that's all I need of that color. Doesn't take much when you start to get to this level of finish in the painting. One thing I do see that needs a little bit of attention is I'm going to take some of my orange color and I'm just going to make sure that I've got a nice reflection there on the horizon line, and just we're actually going to lose the horizon line right there, some of the color going up and some of it going down, but get that very, very intense there. And now I'm going to take some of my lighter yellow color, load my palette knife up with that, and we're just going to add a little bit of bright yellow right in that area, and we're going to repeat that and reflect that at the water portion of our painting. All right, so you can see that we're already building up to our final highlight, which is going to be just titanium white. And make sure that when you load your palette knife, you have, it doesn't come all the way to the bottom, doesn't go all the way to the top, and it's just in the middle of your palette knife. And then I'm just going to lay on that white highlight right there and leave that alone. I don't want to soften the white highlight into the painting. And then at the bottom of the painting in the water area, I'm just going to make sure that I come right down from the white highlight and into the light area of yellow and just lay that bright highlight on there. And that is how we paint our cotton candy sunset. Thanks for joining me today. and I hope you enjoyed painting the cotton candy sunset. Join me next time when we'll be painting Miss Anne's daisies.